You know, when you check off that box on your ballot, you're putting a lot of trust in the name that's next to that check mark. And over the past 8 years, the people of Honolulu, Salt Lake, and Aliomanu have given me their trust, and I feel like I've delivered results for them during that time period. Legislatively, I promoted economic development, particularly in the tech industry. I'm a big advocate for public safety. I've introduced Peter Carlisle's crime bills each year. I'm also a big advocate for education and accountability and making sure that our students are achieving all that they should be achieving. But you know, when it goes beyond those issues, I always use the guide of just common sense in voting for legislation. And common sense hits all of us right there in the pocketbook. And although I'm a Democrat, I don't believe in big government is a better society. I voted against numerous tax increases. I voted against the GET increase. I voted against the barrel tax, the tax that you're paying now which makes your gas more expensive. I voted against the hotel occupancy tax increase. So when it came to particularly big ticket items that just really didn't make sense for our financial well-being, I voted against a lot of tax increases, against what the majority Democrats have advocated. But also importantly, beyond taking leadership from the Capitol, I brought it to our community. And over the past 8 years, I've brought town hall meetings, which this community has never seen before. When there was a bus strike 6 years ago, I took it upon myself to get a Vanpool Hawaii van and drove constituents to and from work or to their doctor's appointments. When the people in Wanalo Valley were complaining about feral chickens, maybe people would laugh about it, but I got my own cage and trap, and I caught 21 chickens over a 7-week time period. Decades ago, the Department of Education cut budgets. They don't have health programs in their schools anymore. So 6 or 8 years ago, I initiated vision screening for our first graders, and have done so every year for 8 years. Just a few months ago, we had our 6th annual Aloha Aina. I mean, for a day, I become the rubbish man for this entire community. So I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves, get dirty, think outside the box and coming up with solutions, because you as community members, you have problems and you want results. You don't want government to tell you, well, that's a federal issue or that's a state issue. You just want the problem solved. So in many of the cases I just cited, those were issues that, oh, okay, I solved them. I didn't have to go and talk to somebody in government and get some kind of approval to make things happen. So when you check off on your box come September and November, think about the person who's delivered results to the community, because that's going to be the person now in the more expansive Senate district. You can judge me on what I've done for the people of Honolulu, Salt Lake, and Aliomanu, and hopefully in the future for the people of Aiea, Foster Village, Stadium, and Pearl Ridge as I expand that. But I think the best judge of someone who's going to take care of your future is someone who has shown a past of taking care of the people in the Senate, in the House district, as you gauge and determine who should be the person best fit to represent you in the Senate level. So hopefully, come September, November, Glenn Wakai will be the name that you will check the box next to.
So, Wakai, we have a question from Barbara Trovo.
My question is, what are your views on the super ferry and its impact on the state of Hawaii, both economically and environmentally?
I thought that was a tragic loss for the state. It's unfortunate that I think that a vocal minority was able to help get rid of the super ferry. I thought that it had huge economic potential for this state, potential that is now gone. At that time, remember we had Mahalo Airlines, we had Aloha Airlines, and we had Hawaiian Airlines, and we were all clamoring about, we need to have a secondary mode of transportation, and certainly water transportation made sense. Now that Aloha is gone, now that Mahalo is gone, we have Go Airlines that came in. But still, you saw how the cost of airline flights have dramatically increased from before those days when we could get a neighbor island trip for $60. Now we're paying $100 plus one way on it for travel. And the super ferry certainly would have provided us another opportunity for reasonable transportations, but perhaps most importantly, the cargo facet of it had huge potential for especially agricultural items getting to and from the neighbor islands to Oahu. And it's unfortunate that opportunity probably will never come back. We may have a ferry service in the future, but it certainly won't be that particular vessel. So I thought it was a loss. It's unfortunate in the way it came about that there were measures that were cut here and there. The super ferry didn't do its due diligence, didn't go through an EIS process, an environmental impacts process, which takes a lot of time. They were able to cut short some of those procedures. The judiciary found that they really got their hand caught in the cookie jar. We legislatively tried to save the super ferry, but ultimately the judiciary said even that was not enough, that the super ferry really didn't do its due diligence at the beginning. So it's really unfortunate that we will probably seen the last of the Hawaii super ferry.
So, my second question from Mr. Denisiki.
Glenn. Yes. Thank you.
I used to didn't need a mic, but I'm getting old. And thank you for your service to our district. Currently, court revenue from citations and arrests made by city employees are placed in the state general fund. What is your position on this process?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because 4 years ago I introduced a measure in the state legislature that was actually going to increase the cost of fines. Right now, for example, you get a speeding ticket. It's about $120 depending upon how high over the speed limit you go. On the mainland, you were to get that same speeding ticket, you're paying $300+ a year. So my thought was, okay, well, why don't we increase the cost of these tickets? Because actually, let me rewind. Right now, it's about $18 million in citation fees that the state collects, and the state has refused to relinquish any part of that $18 million to the city. So having that knowledge that it's probably not going to be feasible for us to give a chunk of that money over to the city, I felt, okay, how do we change this dynamic so we can keep the $18 million for the state, and why don't we just increase the size of the pie by increasing the cost of these fines? The people who are perpetrating crimes and speeding on our roads, they're the ones that should be paying for the administration of the judiciary, should be paying for the police officers. All of us law-abiding citizens shouldn't have to be subsidizing the court system. So the mentality I had 4 years ago when I introduced this bill was, okay, well, let's have the people who are speeding, being reckless on our roads, let them be the ones that pay for our court system, pay for our public safety system, and go down that route. But I agree with you. I think it's inherently unfair that the city not be getting any part of that $18 million pot when they're the ones who have the cops on the streets that are issuing the tickets. The money comes to the judiciary, and the state keeps all of that money.
Thank you, Mr. Oakley.
Can I follow up quickly?
We're running out of time.
If you do become our state senator, do you intend to follow up on your sentiments?
Yes, I certainly do.
Okay.
But I can tell you there were a lot of people who are out there who, nobody wants to pay a fine, whether it's a $5 fine or a $300 fine. So the public testimony was against that bill because they came after me saying, oh, look, Glenn, you're just trying to increase the state coffers with increasing fines. But if at the end of the day we can not increase your taxes and kind of shove some of the cost of government to the people who are victimizing us, then I thought that was probably the more prudent route to go.
Thank you, Mr. Oakley. Mr. Pascual.
Hi, my name is Ben Pasquan. I'm running for Senate District 15. I'm a conservative. I'm a pro-life, pro-traditional marriage, conservative, Reagan Republican, responsible for all my actions, and dedicated to the principles which made our country free. I'm a former American soldier, guardian of our country and our way of life, and I was once prepared to give our life in their defense. I want to be able to apply that same sense of dedication and selfless service into the realm of politics. I've done a tour of Bosnia and a tour of Afghanistan. I've spent 8 years protecting our nation and our country. Now I'm running for office because I want to protect your families and your wallets. Whether we work together for a day or a lifetime, I look forward to solving any problems and conquering any challenges that we may face. Thanks for your time.
We have a couple questions for you, Mr. Pascual.
Yes, sir.
Barbara Children. The same
Same question? I'm going to ask you the same question. What are your views on the super ferry and its impact on the state of Hawaii, environmentally and economically?
Okay, my views on the super ferry. I agree with Glenn that it's a tragic loss for the state. In regards to the environmental impact statements, One question I got is, why isn't the same standard being applied to, to the commercial vessels that are operating between the islands? And I'd like to reiterate, that's the losses of the super ferry is a tragic loss to the state. It's something that's very needed.
Thank you. Second question is Mr. Steve Gladstein.
Yeah, good evening. I took the liberty to look at your website, and it has the following statement. Immediately upon taking office, I will introduce the following bills, each to be readily available for public inspection and scrutiny, each to be given full and open debate, and each to be given a clear and fair vote. And one of these goals is to, quote, rekindle a conservative fiscal responsibility. This fundamental philosophy will ensure careful spending of taxpayers' dollars and keep a lid on taxes affecting our families and businesses. It will also require government to live under the same budget constraints as our families and businesses. Could you identify what specific programs in the state would you recommend cutting or eliminating in order to make this happen?
All right, before I cut any programs within the state, I want to hear from every single department and I want to hear from the community. Basically, in a nutshell, I work for you guys. I'm hoping someday you guys are going to be my boss, and I'm going to be accountable to you. I'm going to be answering to you, and I want to hear your differing views and opinions about what programs need to be cut. How can we streamline government to make it more efficient to work for you? Does that answer your question, sir?
No, it doesn't. Once again, I'd ask if you don't know any specific programs, and just say you don't know any specific programs. I mean, this is a very difficult year for everybody, and so my question was what specific programs, and I would expect that any of the candidates would have some idea what programs are out there, what's fat, what's lean, et cetera.
Well, sir, I got to do more research, which I want to talk to the community, and I want to talk to these specific departments before I make a recommendation as to which programs need to be cut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pascual, Mr. Wakai, thank you very much for attending our meeting.